It should be ready as I always am, not ready as I'll ever be. Because you're only as ready as you have been in the past. How could you reach a new level of readiness? It's either on or it's off.
No, it's not. It's not past. It's not backward looking. It's forward looking.
I know it's
as
looking
I'll
forward,
ever
but then
be.
but they always try to predict the future by looking at the past. So you're as ready as you've ever been.
No.
In this current state, as I'll ever be. How can you know? Maybe you'll be more ready later down the road, but ready as I've ever been is a much more accurate measure.
I'm not saying you're incorrect for taking that extra step and drawing that extra conclusion. I'm saying that most people that hear it aren't thinking that.
If you're going to be one thing,
forward looking.
Should be efficient. Okay.
That's right.
So I could tell you.
I'll tell you what's not efficient.
I could tell you what kind of man you are.
You know it's not moving very, very efficiently right now? My body.
Yeah. Uh-huh. You did it to me again, didn't you?
What did I do?
You concocted a cockamamie scheme to try to show our athletic prowess or lack thereof. And then threw me into the buzzsaw. Meanwhile, he plays a couple of plays of the first game and then decides he's going to go on the IR, the injured reserve list, and just collect a paycheck each week, calling out audibles to the other guys that are getting saucer passes and their head taken off going across the middle. Putting their bodies on the line, Dane. You can't be asked. That's all I'm saying.
David, listen. First of all, your whole premise is wrong. Because you started with, I concocted this cockamamie scheme to get you to play and whatever. Hold on. What actually happened is my friend had a team he wanted, and he wanted a couple more people on it. He asked me, I wanted to join, and I simply gave you a man-to-man proposition. David, would you like to play with us?
Who called my agent?
Would you like to join the squad?
He showed me the contract. Which one of you sent it over? I know you're both lawyers.
And you, as a man in your near 40s,
I'm a man.
accepted said proposition.
I'd round down. Mathematically speaking.
I'm just saying, dear listener, don't let David get off the hook as if there was some metaphorical gun to his head that I, forced him into this situation.
He foisted a weekly ass kicking on me.
Now, with that aside,
okay.
Knowing that David is a man,
now that airing of grievances is over,
for his own decisions.
Now that the airing of grievances is over, we can move to the feats of strength.
Yes, which I apparently have, but less and less of each passing
especially
day.
That soft back of yours. Guess we know what kind of book Dane would be.
So, did Dane get hurt very early in game one? Absolutely. Is it an insurmountable injury for which he can't come back on to the season?
Exactly. It's one of those injuries that you can stroll up to the game on and be like, all right, I'll be on the pine if anyone needs me. If anyone needs any orange slices.
If you don't take enough time off to let it fully heal, it's just going to be something that keeps recurring the whole season. Which is what somebody
that wants to ride the fucking IR and just collect a check would say. Not willing to get out there and get bloody and get dirty with the rest of us. What would old Skippy say?
I would love nothing more.
What would Lee Corso say?
What would he say?
Rub some dirt on it, kid. Get back in the game where you belong.
That was like NCAA, like 6 through 9 or something like that.
06 through 9.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Make sure that you...
nice.
It's like the 6th. Anyway.
Good times. So what?
We've got things to be excited about today, Dane.
Do we? What's exciting?
I need to go rustling through my closet and find my cape and cowl.
Ooh.
It should be somewhere. You're sitting in my seat, though.
It's a nice seat.
It is a nice seat. It's leather.
Yeah.
Rich Corinthian leather. That's what got you?
Yeah, that's the one. Leather. The Corinthian leather is the one that got me.
All right, so without much ado, we're going to go see the Batman after this. So I'm super excited to see what kind of libertarian ideals he pushes during this movie.
So we can't possibly be sitting here for 3 hours making this episode. Is that what you're saying?
So you've got something to look forward to because we're not going to gnaw your damn ear off, listener. So with that being said...
Welcome to Weapons Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 84, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/84. Can be found on any podcast app. Just search for Weapons of Meme Destruction. Can also be found on YouTube. And Odyssey is where everything will be, even if you don't see one of the episodes on YouTube. That's because risk of banning. We took preemptive strikes to not get banned on YouTube.
We'll ban ourselves, damn it.
That's right. That's how Liberty really wins.
I'm not fired. I fucking quit.
So definitely check out the Odyssey channel. We have like 70-ish subscribers on YouTube and only like 7 on Odyssey. If you like what we have to say on YouTube, you'll like it just as much on Odyssey. And when you wake up one day and we're disappeared from YouTube, then you know where to go.
Or just look up the Iliad. They'll point you toward the Odyssey.
But other than getting the episodes, link up with us on our other socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, yada yada yada.
You played with the rhythm today a little bit. You let me drop us in.
Oh, I like that.
I didn't know I had the reins, and then all of a sudden, here we are. Here we are.
Okay, so David and I would like to play a little game with you.
I want to play a game.
We're going to push all the context off to the back of the game. You know, some of the more seasoned listeners will know based on the players in the game that, what we're referring to. But for any newbies, you'll get the context at the end, which will really kind of sink the point home that we're trying to make with this episode. So, David, we're going to play, I don't know, a lightning round necessarily. We might do some talking in between. But we're going to play a little trivia.
Oh.
A little trivia game. Okay?
Is it a point-based system, or am I trying to outwit my opponent, or what am I doing?
What is that whole from the whose line is it anyway? The points are made up and the scores don't matter.
Right?
Okay, so I'm going to ask David a series. I'm going to give him some objective stats. And he is going to put it either under the category of Ukraine conflict or the conflict going on in Yemen. David, are you ready?
Let's get it on.
All right. So the first statistic is about 2/3 of the population, or 20.7 million people, need humanitarian assistance, according to the UN.
You softballed it in there. I feel like you're throwing it at me real soft because you think I'm going to take a big hack at it, but it's going to drop off the table at me. I'm going to go Yemen for 500, Alec.
Ding, ding, ding. David is correct.
Woo!
That is Yemen.
Off the schneid. Here we go. Batting 1,000.
All right. That's pretty bad, though. I think 2/3 of a population.
Dane, let's not get bogged down in the humanity crisis. Let's just focus on the fact that I have 500 points right now.
Okay. How about this one?
Actually, you should probably get into it a little bit. Well, that's on the back end. Context is later.
Okay. At least 130,000 civilians have died as a result of starvation and disease since the conflict started. That's more than have been killed by all the bombs and bullets that have been dropped there. So 130,000 civilians
of starvation
as a result of starvation and disease, stuff like that.
I'm going to go Yemen again because the Ukraine happened too soon for like disease to be kicking in.
Okay. You are correct. That is also Yemen. David, listen, totally off mic, which we're going to clip this out. Don't you realize you're supposed to throw some of these? You're not supposed to get them all right.
No, I want them to think that I'm super smart. We're not unclipping that.
Okay.
I didn't cheat either. These are all coming at me fresh.
Okay.
But I just logicked that one out.
At one point during the conflict, one side's forces were allowed a ceasefire to go forward to allow what they called humanitarian corridors for people to leave a couple cities in that country. You think that happened in Ukraine or happened in Yemen?
Well, if I intentionally miss this one now after we just had that conversation, they're going to know the fix is in. That Vegas got a hold of us and is throwing off the numbers. I'm going to go with Yemen just to intentionally miss it.
David, you're not supposed to say that you intentionally miss it.
But I don't want them to think I'm dumb.
You're terrible at this.
I am. I'm atrocious.
Yes, that was in Ukraine.
Oh, okay.
Russian forces declared a ceasefire to allow humanitarian corridors out of Ukrainian cities Mariupol and Volnovakha.
Well, that's pretty nice of them.
Now, since that originally happened, allegedly, the Russians violated the ceasefire and all that kind of stuff.
Good.
So, but for a short time
I hate to think there were some glimpses of humanity in any of these.
For a short time
scenarios.
there, they did allow for humanitarian corridors.
Yeah. And then they said, no gipsies, backsies.
Okay, so about an estimated 73% of the over 4 million people that were displaced, they are women and children. 73% of the 4 million people that, a lot of people flowing out of both places the whole time. So.
Yemen.
That is Yemen.
It is Yemen?
That is.
I thought it was Ukraine. I thought it was
Was
intentional.
that an intentional miss?
I accidentally got that one right. Was it really Yemen?
It was right.
Oh, shit. I thought it was the Ukraine because of that mandate from every 18-year-old to 60-year-old was forced to pick up a gun and start fighting the Russians in Ukraine, which makes all these feminists.
That's why the 73% would be so high.
Right.
Yeah. But even when that's not going on, something pretty bad's going on in Yemen, at least in the regards of the impacts on women and children.
At least they're not alone. There's darkness in all of the world, thank God.
Okay. How about this one? The number, the total number, sorry. I had to find the one I wanted.
The suspense is killing me.
Yeah, I know. It's the listeners on the edge of their seat. Hopefully they're not driving.
Did they die? Did their mics cut out?
Did the NSA finally shut them down? So the situation in the country at issue, either Yemen or Ukraine, is so dire that at one point, the total number of refugees fleeing the conflict was 1.5 million.
Oh, no, that's a good one. Now I'm caught in the old Ruth or Lucille. I'm going to go.
That's Ukraine? You think that's Yemen?
I'm going to go Ukraine. Just because I haven't shouted out Ukraine yet.
It is Ukraine.
It is? Damn, I'm good.
According to...
if only I would have taken my SATs like this, I'd have gotten into an actual school.
According to an article from Al Jazeera, the situation in Ukraine remains dire, and the number of refugees fleeing the Russian invasion could potentially rise to 1.5 million by the end of the weekend. Jesus. From a current 1.3 million, the head of the UN Refugee Agency said. So yeah. A lot of outflow from Ukraine going on right now.
But don't let that spoil your good mood.
Let's see. Here's one. Okay, more than 1 million pregnant and breastfeeding women.
This is already. I don't feel comfortable answering this question.
Hold on. Are already acutely malnourished, and that number could double because of the food insecurity that the country is now facing.
Jesus.
So you already have a vulnerable population that's chronically malnourished, and that number could double because of food insecurity in the country.
Well, knowing what I know about Ukraine and how it's such a fertile place, I can't imagine that's Ukraine, and because it's been so soon. I'm going to go.
Well, if it's soon, then if one person's malnourished, you can double that to 2 by the next week. This is actually the more least likely it is, and the more likely it could be that country.
I'm going to soft Yemen. That
one is Yemen.
Okay.
Yes. And now you might be wondering, you might be saying, hey guys, why is there such food insecurity in the country? Well, one of the coming up questions will answer that for you here in a little bit. Okay.
Well, you just told me the answer to that question then, Dane. If you bring up food again, I'm going to get Yemen. I'm just Yemen all day.
Yeah.
Anytime you bring up food,
I know, but listen, the whole structure of this game show broke down with the first question.
Listen here, Drew. All right? I didn't do anything. Or are you Aisha?
Here's our next line. Less than half of the health facilities are currently functioning, and many that remain operational lack basic equipment. Many health workers have not received a regular salary.
You got me in a rock and a hard spot here.
This is harder than I thought, reading these things and taking out all of the context and making it generic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working double time
I was
over
gonna
here.
say,
I want a raise.
If anyone ever takes your class when you're a professor, they're going to love your tests because you're not going to be able to hold yourself back from telling them the answer within the question.
No, I think I'm doing good.
You're doing all right.
Kind of.
But okay,
so who does this one apply to?
Let's go. Let's go Yemen for 400, Alec.
It is also Yemen.
It is? I fucking meant to miss that one.
Less than half of the health facilities are functioning, and many that remain operational lack basic equipment. Many health workers have not received a regular salary, and here's the part I left off because that's what I told you, in several years.
Holy shit.
So remember the heroes from all the people that supported, all the COVID stuff
Dane,
over here?
Are they wearing masks? You think they're wearing masks over there? Are they triple vaccinated?
Well, they didn't get into that in said article.
Huh, that's interesting. I wonder how seriously they're taking Corona with all that crap going over there.
Yep.
Going on over there.
Okay. So this was an ally in the country. This is a direct quote from that ally talking about a particular policy that he wanted help from his allies in, and what we gave him. So the quote is, all the people who will die starting from this day will also die because of you, because of your weakness, because of your disunity. That's what they had to say to the ally of whichever conflict you choose.
The Ukraine?
That one is Ukraine. And that was a quote from President Zelensky talking to basically the
NATO.
US and NATO for not instituting
Can we
a
just
no-fly
stop?
zone over
Can we
Ukraine.
just drop it already? Can we just drop the NATO bullshit?
Just
Can
say
we
the
go?
US.
Can we just say the U.S. and their group of flunkies or whatever the hell you want to call it?
Yeah.
Just the yes men behind him. Yeah.
So yes, because the United States would not intervene militarily, because again, let's be honest, that is exactly what a no-fly zone is. It involves shooting down Russian military aircraft. If you want to go from a quote-unquote Cold War to a hot war, that's how you do it. The same thing came up in Syria in 2013 or 14. All the neocon warhawks in the United States wanted no-fly zones over Syria until luckily the cooler heads prevailed and are like, you fucking idiots. You realize that requires shooting down the number one or number two most heavily nuclear armed country in the world. You want to provoke them into a hot war. And here we are, same thing going on.
How hot
in
is the
Ukraine.
sun, Dane? Have you looked it up?
Pretty toasty.
And how hot does a nuclear blast get?
Does it get all the way up to sun
I think
level?
you might need some SPF, at least 70.
SPF a lot.
Polarized glasses. You're going to want to see that microburst coming straight for you. God.
Are you ready for the next question? Or do you still have more to say about the...
Do I look depressed enough for the next question?
Well, and here's the funny thing about that, right? So
It's hilarious.
Yeah. So all of the neocons,
all the tongue in cheek here.
all the neocons, the McCains, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, back in that time, 2013, 14, they were the ones that were saying we need a no-fly zone. Obviously, the traditional war hawks, but to Obama's credit, he, for whatever reason, staved off and didn't actually do that stuff. And
Hey, check
it
out. Now you can do this. Thanks, Obama.
We can actually do a genuine thing. And that's the way it's always been understood, right? The right neocon warhawks, those are the ones that want to gin up war. But not no more, stranger. There's been another party platform flip. Because now it's all the former anti-war lefties are like, we have to engage and help Ukraine and no-fly zone and da-da-da-da-da. And why aren't we doing more and blah, blah, blah. And isn't it funny how enough time passage makes hypocrites of us all?
Batman quote.
So
you either die a hero or you live long enough to become a villain.
Indeed.
Batman quote.
Indeed. David's staying on brand today.
I gotta keep you aren't taking me out of my good humor for Batman. I can be depressed after Batman, but I'm going to be excited before and during Batman.
Okay, David. I think here's an ambiguous one that should throw you off.
I love ambiguous and androgynous things.
10,000 children have been killed or maimed since the beginning of the conflict.
Jesus.
And thousands more have been recruited into the fighting.
Christ.
An estimated 2 million children are internally displaced. So 10,000 dead, many more recruited into fighting, and
Ukraine?
An estimated 2 million children internally displaced.
Ukraine?
That one is actually Yemen.
Okay. I thought so.
And
I
see,
finally missed one.
You're
welcome.
What I thought would throw you off about the thousands recruited is because the Ukraine thing of like 16 to 60 or whatever it was can't leave. Now, maybe legally in Ukraine, I don't know. Maybe legally in Ukraine, 16 is an adult. But in the United States, that would be considered a child.
You can't drink, but you can die for your country.
That's right. So I thought that one would throw you off.
You can't even see a titty in a strip club, but you can die for your country in this. What a world. What a world. What a world. All right, Drew.
So, are you ready for the next one?
Yes.
Ooh, this one's going to be hard to take out.
All right. Now you're talking my language.
I should have wrote out how I would genericify.
Glad to see we're sprechen Sie the same lingle.
Okay. So the humanitarian situations going on in this country were created by an ally who had basically put up sanctions, embargo, things along that nature, right? They're trying to punish the government that's doing the bad stuff. They put this into place, which basically caused many of the humanitarian issues that are going on.
Or do I have to get this one wrong?
I've probably completely butchered this one anyway. If you figured it out, I mean, good for you.
Is that the end of the question?
Yeah, I want you to legit get this one right.
Yemen.
Yes. I had no idea. All right, I'm just going to read this part from this article because I had no idea how to Ukrainify this little piece of information. So
Ukrainify?
Yeah, for purposes of trying to throw you off.
To it. Just throw a little bit of that on it.
All right, dear listener. So here is the quote from the article. It says, the U.S. shares responsibility for this killing blockade. So the blockade, when I said earlier we were going to get to the food insecurity and the humanitarian crisis going on in Yemen, this is explaining part of that. So the U.S. shares responsibility for the blockade of preventing food, medicine getting to the people in Yemen, and that's why they're having such a difficult time. And back to the article, it says, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, the U.S. supported UNSCR 2216, which authorized an arms embargo that has become the pretext for trying to starve Yemen into submission. So the purpose of the revolution was to stop arms going into Yemen to ostensibly arm the resistance. And what it actually has been used for is to starve out the entire country, including innocent civilians. As an arms embargo, it has been a complete failure, but as a weapon against the civilian population, it has been alarmingly effective. The U.S. has also supported the enforcement of the blockade.
And the U.S. official policy, according to that bungle job, is...
Keep going, brother.
Whoopsie daisy.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So that's
Fast and Furious all over again. We're gonna give the right people the guns. Oh, we lost the guns and gave it to the wrong people. What are they doing with them? Hurting the people we were trying to give the guns to. Shit. That should just be the fulcrum of all of our foreign affairs. Is just the main line of it is always just shit. We meant to do this, and now it did the exact opposite of what we meant it to do.
All right, we're coming close to the end of our little game here. Okay, at some point...
Don't be stingy, Mark.
At some point in either one of the conflicts, a plane hit a civilian, not the plane itself.
What was the civilian doing at 35,000 feet? That's no civilian. That's Superman. What the fuck was that?
Oh, David. Can we be serious for 5 seconds?
I'm trying to add some levity to it.
Okay.
I'm freaking dying over here.
Okay. Not a single plane hitting a single civilian. A military plane hit a civilian target.
This plane hit somebody. What?
Oh, man.
I'm sorry. Repeat the question.
Okay.
The statement. Sorry.
This strike killed 60 people and wounded at least 100 more. Okay. At least 3 children were among the dozens of people that were killed in the attack. And that's it. That's what happened. Did that happen in Ukraine or did that happen in Yemen?
I'm still stuck on the 35,000 feet. Let's go Ukraine for 200.
That was actually Yemen. And putting all the context back in, a Saudi coalition airstrike on a prison killed at least 60 people and wounded at least 100 more in northern Yemen as part of the coalition's reprisal attacks after the Houthis claimed drone and missile attacks that hit targets in Abu Dhabi earlier this week. At least 3 children are among the dozens of people killed Friday.
You know what all this makes me think of?
What?
Just to like bring it back home for a second.
Mm-hmm.
It's like maybe the next time just eat the cold French fries that they brought you and don't bitch about that shit so much. You know, like my Wi-Fi is out. Like, anyway, like doesn't the Ukraine not have internet because they're getting
well,
my cell phone only has 3 bars of 5G.
On that particular piece of information, knowing that that's going on in Yemen and Ukraine, I want to bring the listener back to remembering, and many of you probably already know, but in case for those of you that don't, is that although the forces involved in the destruction of Yemen are largely Saudi, the United States is providing arms, logistical support, and basically the implicit stamp of okay from the entire world in terms of there's nothing to see here, folks. The U.S. is supporting every single one of these things actively, has been for, I think Yemen's been going on since like 2015 in terms of the United States.
Big reveal?
It could be earlier. No, we do have 2 more questions.
Okay.
But so that's what the United States has been supporting for at least 7 years at this point versus what's going on in Russia. So here's another one. You kind of jumped the shark on what you were just saying with the internet. So, yeah, the country doesn't have internet.
Ukraine.
Trick question. Both. Boom, dynamite.
Then I didn't get it wrong. Boom. Sack on your face.
So I will read you the Ukraine one first and then the Yemen one. So connectivity to Gigatrans, Ukraine's main internet provider, dropped to below 20% of normal levels before returning to higher levels in the early hours of Friday morning, according to internet monitoring organization NetBlocks. So some internet disruptive connectivity in Ukraine. Here's the Yemen situation. Quote, there were also reports yesterday and today that a coalition airstrike in Hodaya had knocked out internet service throughout the entire country. Not 20% reduction and throughout the entire country, which has cut off Yemenis outside the country from contact with their friends and relatives. So, internet situations going on in both conflicts. I ask you, dear listener, which seems to be the more burdensome version of that?
Long sip of Dane's water. And the next question.
You know, hey, I was talking too much. You were supposed to.
I want to let that sink in, and you take a long sip of that water, and we'll really let him ruminate on your question.
Okay, now here's the question.
For all the marbles,
the United States is arming one or both sides
trick question
in this conflict.
Both. Because we know how to make a fucking profit in war. There's one thing we know.
You are correct. I don't know if this passed though, but here's the because I think this was from before Russia actually invaded. In terms of Ukraine, the U.S. is to send $500 million in arms funding to Ukraine without any reference to tracking of that money flow to not go to, for example, neo-Nazi groups in the country like the Azov Battalion. And at least one senator says that they are. Called on Secretary Blinken to label the Azov Battalion a foreign terrorist organization, saying, quote, that it uses the internet to recruit new members and then radicalize them to use violence to pursue its white identity political agenda. Now, whether that's an accurate portrayal of Azov or not, or whether it's kind of odd that the United States wants to send $500 million in funding over there to potentially, spoiler alert, arm quote unquote moderate rebels.
Like that's never bit us in the ass before. Holy shit.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing is going on in Ukraine.
So we've learned our lesson. So Dane, before you drop this bombshell, quote unquote, that people are probably seeing from a mile away,
Yeah.
I want to preface it with this conversation. Now, obviously, the Ukraine's been on our mind a lot lately. And in my dealings throughout the week, I've had a bunch of conversations. And all I keep hearing about the Ukrainian situation is how crazy Putin is and how unhinged he is and how the best thing that could happen in the world right now is if somebody shot him in the head and just took him out.
Who?
Putin.
Oh.
Just shot Putin in the head and took him out, because that's what should happen when somebody does something so atrocious like this to a peaceful country
David,
that had no problems with it.
We're totally getting canceled now.
Well, that
So wait.
seems to be the sentiment.
This is what the person you were talking to. This is what they said.
I've had a couple of people
Okay.
hit me with that
I was thinking you were saying that, and I was getting nervous.
No. I mean, I'm
on
not
with what they said.
What they said.
On with what these nameless, faceless people said.
These are the opinions.
Which, if we
of
learned
other
anything from
nameless,
Joe
faceless
Rogan,
people.
by quoting other people, you implicitly adopt the views of those individuals.
Right.
So
I'm a Nazi now because I said the words out loud.
Understanding that, on with your story.
Okay. No, that's all I was going to say. So before Dane drops this bombshell, I want you to know that the consensus of normal walking around everyday Americans that pay attention to CNN, Fox, and MSNBC and normal media news is that he's unhinged, he's gone off the rails, and that the best thing that could happen in this scenario is somebody just takes him out. Now, please, Dane, with your bombshell.
Before the bombshell, because the answer to that last question on the game show was both, and I didn't give the Yemen side of the ledger.
So you're fucking this up
in terms
for
of
everybody.
I'm totally doing that.
Oh,
but it's gonna bug me because I have OCD. If we don't talk about it, it's gonna bug
just
me.
spit it out. We're getting further away from my setup. I alley-ooped you, and then you pressed pause in the middle of the game.
But like
to go take a piss and get a new drink.
I wanted to stop.
And I'm sitting here.
I wanted to stop you to say, hey, we haven't done this thing yet. So before you finish, but you were just on a roll.
You should have just done it.
All right. Well, anyway.
Since when do you ever ask for consent?
We're doing it now.
When do you ever ask for consent?
All the time.
Never.
All right. So the Yemen situation in terms of the U.S. arming one side or both, the U.S. continues to assist a coalition of governments that includes one that has already committed genocide, and also includes several more that are in the process of committing an even larger one in terms of mass starvation of the people in Yemen. The U.S. is on the side of the governments doing that to the people of Yemen, just so we're clear. So dropping the bombshell in the context of David's contacts' sentiments, people he's discussed the situation with.
Which I can matriculate down and say that they are parroting what they've been hearing and adding a little probably zhuzh onto it from most of the media outlets,
right?
News media outlets.
And what I would say to that is, look at the narrative that everybody's giving versus what the reality is. If the narrative that the U.S. and everything the U.S. stands for is light, and everything that Russia stands for and all their motivations are darkness, then when I give you a list of abstract goings on and conflicts that they are the drivers of, you should be able to clearly demarcate between which side is doing worse damage, right? If that's true, if the United States is motivated purely by benevolence and love, it should be easy. You shouldn't have mixed up any of those answers to those questions, intentionally or unintentionally. We should be very clear to see who is the good side in prosecuting a war, assuming just war is even a real thing. But the fact that mistakes are made and the lines are blurred at best, if we're being a very generous interpretation of the situation, that should be rather concerning to anybody, regardless of whatever arbitrary geographic borders they find themselves in. Your government is not you, and it certainly doesn't have your best interest in mind. It will send you to war with people halfway around the world that you have no beef with whatsoever for its own objectives and narratives.
Well, I would have summed it up in a different way, shockingly. I heard in these conversations that I've had, they're covering a lot of live action fighting in Ukraine between two opposing forces. And all I hear from the people that are actually engaged in this, I mean, watching it, not engaged in the battle, is that it's so crazy that they're just dropping bombs on these innocent people. And all of these people are running for their lives, and it's so scary and so terrifying. And how could we possibly do this nowadays? And all I'm thinking of is like, we just got done doing that for 20 years.
One place.
All the things you're saying, we did for 20 years. That's what I was surmising. He's done it for a month, Putin, and you're ready to shoot him in the head because he's lost his mind. We did it for 20 years.
Across multiple administrations, both Republican and Democrat, the policies never seemed to change other than to escalate.
And then did we ever think that any of those presidents, Obama, I mean, maybe not so much G-dubs and maybe not so much Trump, but Obama, he was the sane one. He spoke so eloquently. He was
hoping change.
Of course, he was down the best representation of America that we've had so far. But he escalated things in that theater. Escalated to the point where they called him the droner in chief, dropping bombs on weddings. And my whole point is that if they would have shown
and hospitals
and all the like, if they would have shown 6 minutes of the shit we were doing over in Afghanistan and Iraq, what would our population have said? Would they say that we need to shoot Obama in the head, George Bush in the head? But 50% of the population said we needed to shoot Trump in the head just because they didn't like him. But again, it's...
And by the way, if you needed more substance between why people of David and I's persuasion absolutely, positively don't trust the media whatsoever, is because for David's hypothetical of what would the American people have thought if it was plastered in front of their TV screens every day what the United States has been doing for 2 decades plus? I would argue for all the way back to World War II. But there's a guy languishing away in jail for committing the crime of showing you a little snippet of what we were doing. And that's Julian Assange.
There's another guy that's in permanent asylum in that terrorist country, Russia.
Yeah.
For telling
the American people
right.
that your own government is spying on you. And obviously that's Edward Snowden. So this idea of, well, hey guys, if it was really that bad or whatever, we'd be able to see it somehow. Yeah, the few little snippets you've been allowed to see, those people have given up their lives to show that to you.
That wasn't part of the plan.
So we in the West that are supposed to be the upholders of democracy and free speech and freedom around the world and all that kind of stuff, that's how we treat our dissenting voices. And listen, I can already hear it from the people that for whom this is their first episode of the podcast. And maybe, they're not of the same persuasion as us, is I can hear you guys are just engaging in an elaborate whataboutism. You're just saying that, because the United States has been doing it longer and possibly worse, that we shouldn't be concerned about what Putin is doing right now.
In and of the statement, you refute yourself just because we've done it worse and longer.
No, they're saying right. they're steel manning our argument. Oh, okay. They're saying even if we grant you that the United States has been doing so terrible and all that kind of stuff, that you're arguing, because that was worse, then you should avoid talking about this, or it kind of justifies this weaker one of what right. Russia's doing in Ukraine. I can hear that objection that we're engaging in that whataboutism. Now, again, if you think that, go back to the last episode 83, where we make very explicit what our concerns are. The innocent civilians, regardless of where they find themselves geographically, not the governments involved. So we wouldn't support one in favor of the other because the governments are the ones that are at fault. And that pointing out all of these provocations by the United States and the hypocrisies of the United States is not a justification, implicit or explicit, for what Putin has done. You can say both things and be logically consistent. What Putin has done is wrong, and the United States pushing him and engaging in other hypocritical actions around the world is not something that we should turn a blind eye to. Because here's the important thing about why it can't be dismissed with whataboutism. If the United States always does it, it's like that scene from Breaking Bad. He can't keep getting away with it. That feeling, why that scene was so real, is because everybody has had that feeling about some situation in their life.
Of course.
And if you don't think that the geopolitical actors around the world look at the United States and say, they can't keep getting away with it, they're the only ones that are allowed to go in and create humanitarian crises. They're the only ones, and they can continue to have this moral high horse. That's why we've lost trust around the world. It has nothing to do with, oh, well, they didn't trust us or they didn't respect us because of Trump. That's bullshit. They don't respect us because the foreign policy establishment consensus in DC has been doing the same things after failure all around the world, with always intervening and engaging in regime change, et cetera, et cetera. That's why there's no respect for us around the world. David, you had something to say and I kept going.
No, I didn't. I was listening. I was just sitting here, a Swedish chef, just nodding my little head away. But
so being mad about the former makes the current much less likely.
You're not wrong for being upset about Ukraine, is what we're saying.
Correct.
We're upset about Ukraine. But we were also upset for 20 years that we were sitting there bombing with ill regard of people that mostly had nothing but no ill contempt for us. They were just trying to live their lives. That's the problem. It's like, if you hate it in somebody else, why would you resemble it in yourself? Why would you not want to cut that part of yourself out?
Right.
So that's what we're saying. It's just, it's a sticky situation. No one likes to be in it, and we shouldn't engage in it ever again, to be honest with you.
And don't allow the same sort of lies and propaganda that got us into all of the other bad situations before. Allow that to play on to your emotions to justify it now. Because yeah, it sucks seeing pictures of innocent Ukrainian civilians being forced to flee their homes and stuff like that. And it sucks to see, kids being carried under one arm and a bag of food. And those images are terrible. And those images are intended to pull at your heartstrings. We're not saying be emotionless automatons and not feel for those people, but understand that part of the reason of making you have that emotional appeal is to justify things that will objectively make everything worse.
To make you think that we need to step in. We need to send our boys over there. We need to engage in this conflict. That's the narrative. Again, the same media that's tugging on your heartstrings now is the ones that were covering up all the things that we were doing in Afghanistan and Iraq. So they know what they're doing. They're complicit. They're not unbiased.
They have cheerled every war. And don't let this be lost on you in terms of the mainstream media and it being a propaganda arm of the government.
But
those were the same people who for the last 2 years parroted that line, if it saves one life, then it's worth it. And now on a dime, they're talking about escalating a conflict, which is going to kill thousands of lives, if not millions, if it does turn
nuclear war.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Forget millions.
They are willing to push for
this
that.
Thing. They could kill the planet. We could kill the planet 10 times over and still have plenty left to kill it 10 times again.
Yeah.
Like we could be the 8 billion monkeys that let 5 monkeys kill the rest of us. Like, just wake up, guys. Like this isn't a game anymore. Like these guys are literally taking everything from you and giving you nothing back.
And that's the thing. We aren't engaging in nuclear brinksmanship, trying to, create a self-fulfilling prophecy where everything gets worse. People that are pointing these stuff out, that's not the objective. The objective is to get you to see reality clearly.
Right.
Because there is a massive disconnect when somebody says, well, this is the world as it should be. Okay, but what is the world as it is? And if you don't understand how it is, you can't put in any sort of practical steps to get to where you think that it should be. If you're just pie in the sky, should be, and never engage with the practical aspect of it, then you're just going to keep spinning your wheels as reality just continues to run circles around you. And the reality of this situation is the number 1 and number 2 most heavily nuclear armed states in the country, states in the world, are hearing rhetoric from both sides to escalate the conflict. And there are articles coming out that are kind of poo-pooing that as if that's no idea. I saw an article in the Huffington Post with a title that said, could a small nuclear war reverse climate change? A small nuclear war.
Could there be some silver lining to all of us dying?
Now listen, I'm as free speech as anybody. You can ask as stupid a questions as you possibly want. But the fact that an article like that comes out right now is not coincidental.
That's fucking stupid. Can we just blow up a little bit of the world? Just a little bit?
Yeah.
And have no effects? Dude, a train crash, truckers protest in fucking Canada, and now our groceries are affected in price. Like, nothing happens in the world anymore that doesn't have a butterfly effect. But you know what? By God, let's write a Huffington Post article that says, maybe a dash of nuclear holocaust is good. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan said some fucking shit a couple of years ago that we don't like. Yeah, let's cancel him.
And really,
let's get to. And then, by the way, let's make sure all these trans rights are passed in the State of the Union with the puppet in chief. God damn, dude! Like, did you really like? I think we're on the verge of nuclear holocaust, and let's make sure that everyone feels safe. All the furries over here. Are you comfortable? You safe? You secure?
I think that what David's getting at there, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the priorities seem to be a little bit out of whack.
I should say a little bit. A little bit. Just let's focus on this right now, like. The Titanic just hit an iceberg. Yeah, but I want to save these like 5 sandwiches. These sandwiches were delicious. I want to make sure that I have them tomorrow.
Yeah. So here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Pointing out hypocrisy and pointing out...
Was there anything we said that we could be Nazis for in this episode?
I mean...
What haven't we said that we can't be Nazis? You know? Let's be honest.
Everything, it's a word that's expanded so far, it's essentially meaningless at this point. But, you know, it's like if you think the marginal tax rate should be 2% less than I do,
Nazis!
You're a Nazi.
Goddamn Nazis everywhere! Just because you like the color red.
So, you know, to really pull the thing into focus, and where I always try to, because listen, I can come off a certain way on this podcast, but I assure you, dear listener, I am a majority optimistic kind of guy.
Eternal.
Maybe it's 51-49%, but I'm always seeing the glasses a little bit, half full. And with that being said, I want to bring it back to the human aspect of this whole thing. And a theme that runs through many episodes on this podcast is we are not our governments. When you see a headline that says US does this, Ukraine does that, Russia does that, yada, 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 or they will use the individual, they'll say Putin does this, and Putin is supposed to be a representative of all of Russia, right? That's implicitly how they want to build it in your mind. And they want to build it in your mind that you need to draw lines in the sand and you need to join a team. And the direction that team goes, you need to go mindlessly. If the United States calls up tomorrow and said, today's the day one of the draft. We're reinstituting it. You know, anything to say about it. This war's too big. And you push in any direction other than the direction of the team, you're a pariah, you can be thrown in prison, all that kind of stuff, right? And the way governments get away with that is by building up this meme in the culture's mind that the actions of our government you must at least implicitly own. And in one sense you do, because the decisions of politicians always fall on the innocent civilian. You know, whether it be higher gas prices or whether it be completely being displaced from your home. The innocent civilians are the ones that suffer the consequences. But Ukrainians are not the government in Kiev. Russians are not the government in Moscow. We are not the government in DC. We are individual free people capable of being free and trading with whoever we want in this world. And to the extent that governments get in the way of that, the standard of living falls for everybody, and a lot of human suffering results from it. So stop with that meme. Stop believing that the government is synonymous with you and push in a direction of freedom and peace.
And on that cheerier note than everything we discussed, Where can they find this podcast, Dan?
They can find it at wmdpodcast.com/84. They can also find it on any podcast app, YouTube, Odyssey, and link up with us on all of our other socials, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
Now, everybody listening, go out and do something that puts a smile on your face. Dan and I are going to go watch The Batman, and I hope it puts a smile on my face. Stay safe, stay sanitary, and above all, stay free.